The day the man screamed, my son was holding his hand, and everybody thought something evil had happened. I still see it clear like it just happened now. Musa shouted and fell back like fire touched him. People ran out from their houses. Someone pulled my child away from him. Someone shouted that the man was mad. My heart nearly stopped because my son was crying and Musa was shaking on the ground like rain was beating him from inside. That moment did not start that day. It started before we even moved into the street. We came to the street with hope and little money. My husband said the place was calm and good for raising a child. I saw the narrow road, the children playing football with rubber ball, women frying a cara in front of their houses, men sitting on benches talking about work and life. I felt peace. I felt like we belonged. From the first week, I noticed Musa. He lived 3 houses from us. He was quiet and always kept to himself. Every morning he swept his front like someone expecting an important visitor. Every evening he came back from work and went straight inside. People greeted him, but he never shook hands. He only nodded or said good evening without stretching his hand. The women noticed it fast. They said the man was proud. They said he did not like poor people. They said maybe he was doing big work in town and did not want to mix with us. I listened, but I did not talk much. I was new. I did not want trouble. My son noticed him too. Children see things adults ignore. He asked me one day why that uncle never plays with anybody. I told him some people like their space. I warned him not to disturb Musa. He nodded, but children forget fast. That afternoon, the sun was hot, and I was washing clothes outside. My son was running up and down with other children. Musa came out to sweep his front like always. I looked up once and went back to my washing. Then everything broke. I heard the scream, not normal scream. It was fear, deep fear. I dropped the cloth and ran. I saw Musa on the ground and my son standing there with his small hands shaking. People were already gathering. Someone held my son and dragged him away. My body went cold. As a mother, fear enters you before sense. I shouted my son's name. I checked his body. No blood, no injury. But Musa was crying like a child. Big man crying without shame. He kept saying, "Please no touch, please no touch." That was when I knew something was wrong. Not pride, not madness, something deep. As people argued and pointed fingers, I stood there holding my son tight. I felt guilt sit on my chest. I had warned him, but warning is not fence. In that moment, I knew this street was not as simple as I thought, and whatever lived inside that man's fear was now part of my child's story, and part of mine too. That night, sleep did not come to my house. My son turned on the bed again and again, waking up to ask if the screaming man would come for him. Each time I pulled him close and told him he was safe, but inside me, I was not settled. My mind kept going back to the way Musa cried on the ground, the way his body shook like he was fighting something nobody else could see. By morning, the whole street was talking. Women gathered by the water tap. Men argued near the provision store. Children whispered like they had seen a ghost. Some said Musa had always been strange. Some said maybe he was cursed. Some blamed my son for touching a grown man without warning. I heard everything as I passed, carrying my bucket, feeling eyes follow me. I felt anger rise in me, but guilt was stronger. I kept asking myself if I had failed as a mother. If I had watched better, maybe nothing would have happened. But another part of me kept remembering Musa's fear. That was not acting. That was not pride. That was pain. Around noon, I decided to do something I had been avoiding. I went to Musa's house. My legs felt heavy as I stood in front of his gate. The compound was quiet. I knocked gently. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. After some moments, the gate opened slowly. Musa stood there. His eyes were red and tired. He looked like someone who had not slept. For a second, we just looked at each other. I wanted to speak, but words were hard to find. I told him I was the child's mother. I told him I came to say sorry. I told him my son did not mean harm. As I spoke, my voice shook. I was ready for him to shout or insult me, but he did not. He stepped back and allowed me in, keeping a wide space between us. Inside his compound was neat and quiet, like nobody lived there. He sat on one chair and I sat on another, far apart. The silence between us was heavy. He told me my son was not at fault. He said the scream surprised even him. He said he had tried to control it but failed. As he spoke, his hands shook slightly, and he kept rubbing them together like he was trying to clean something invisible. I watched him closely. I noticed the gloves on the table beside him. I noticed how he avoided even brushing his own skin against the chair. My heart softened. "People think I am proud," he said. "People think I hate them, but it is not so." He stopped for a while, breathing slowly, like choosing his next words with care. Then he said, "Touch does something to him." He said sudden touch takes him back to a place he does not want to remember. He did not go into details. He did not need to. His eyes carried enough story. I left his house with a heavy heart. Outside, the street was noisy as always, but everything felt different to me. I saw how quick people were to judge what they did not understand. I saw how easy it was to label pain as pride. That evening, I sat with my son and explained again why some people do not like being touched. I told him to be careful with other people's bodies and space. He listened quietly, his small face serious. As night came, I realized this story was not over. The street would not forget easily, and Musa's past, whatever it was still sitting with him, waiting for another careless hand or harsh word to wake it up again. The trouble started again 3 days later, and this time it was not a child that caused it. It was the street itself. It was a hot afternoon, the kind that makes people angry without knowing why. Water was not running, and everyone was tired. Women gathered with empty buckets. Men complained loudly. Voices rose, tempers rose with them. In the middle of it all, Musa walked past, coming back from work earlier than usual. Someone greeted him and stretched out a hand. Musa nodded and tried to pass. The man felt ignored. Words were exchanged. Pride came out of someone's mouth again. Before anyone could stop it, the man grabbed Musa's shoulder to turn him back. Everything broke loose. Musa froze. His eyes went wide. He shouted and tried to pull away. The man held on, thinking Musa was just being dramatic. People gathered fast. Someone laughed. Someone said, "Leave him now." Someone else said, "Teach him listen." I was there. I saw the fear enter Musa's face before the scream came out. It was the same scream from before, raw and full of panic. He struggled like someone drowning, knocking over buckets, pushing bodies away, begging for space. The man holding him got angry. He pushed Musa hard. Musa fell and hit his head on the ground. Blood showed small on his temple. That was when fear turned to silence. The street went quiet. For a moment, nobody moved. Then people rushed in. Some tried to lift Musa. He shouted again, telling them not to touch him. His body shook badly. His eyes were not seeing the street anymore. I felt something rise inside me. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was shame. I stepped forward and shouted for everyone to stop. I told them to give him space. I reminded them of what happened with my son. I said this man was not proud. I said this man was wounded. Some people listened, some did not, but the shouting stopped. Someone brought water and placed it beside Musa instead of pouring it on him. Slowly his breathing came back. Slowly his eyes returned to the street. Later, when things settled, people started blaming each other. The man who grabbed Musa said he did not know. Others said Musa should explain himself better. Others said he should move away if he could not behave like normal people. I went home shaken. My son followed me quietly. He asked why people were angry with the man who screamed. I did not know how to answer him fully. How do you explain to a child that adults can be cruel when they do not understand fear? That night I could not keep quiet anymore. I spoke to my husband. I told him what I saw. I told him the street was becoming dangerous for Musa. I told him silence was helping nobody. We agreed that something had to change. Either Musa would be broken again or the street would learn. The next morning I went to Musa's house. He looked worse than before. His head was bandaged. His eyes were empty. I told him the street was talking again. I told him people were tired of guessing. He listened quietly. When I finished, he looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. He said maybe it was time, not because he wanted to talk, but because keeping quiet was no longer protecting him. As I left his compound, I felt fear and hope walk together inside me. Fear of what his story would bring, hope that the truth might finally calm the street before it destroyed him completely.
The meeting happened on a Sunday evening when most people were at home. The sun was going down and the street felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Chairs were brought out. Some people stood. Children were pushed inside houses. Musa came out last and sat on a chair close to his gate, leaving space around him. Nobody complained. The memory of his scream was still fresh. I sat with my husband near the mango tree. My hands were cold. I kept thinking of my son and how close we all came to turning a wound into something worse. People talked first. They talked plenty. Some said Musa was causing trouble with his silence. Some said he should greet properly like other men. Some said the street was not a hospital and everybody had their own problems. As they spoke, Musa kept his eyes on the ground. His hands were inside gloves even though the weather was hot. When the talking started going round in circles, Musa stood up slowly. The street went quiet. Even the generator noise from the next compound sounded far away. He said he did not like to talk about himself. He said he came to this street to live in peace. He said he knew people thought he was proud, but pride was not his problem. Fear was. He paused many times, breathing like the words were heavy to carry. He said years ago in another town, trouble broke out one night. People accused him of something he did not do. They did not ask questions. They did not listen. They held him down with many hands, rough hands, angry hands, hands that did not care if he lived or died. As he spoke, I saw his body change. His shoulders tightened. His voice shook. Some people looked away. Some leaned forward. He said he survived that night, but something broke inside him. After that, any sudden touch felt like danger. Any hand on his skin felt like that night coming back. He said he wore gloves not because he was better than anyone, but because they helped him breathe. The street stayed quiet. Even the people who liked to argue had nothing to say. I saw shame on faces. I saw understanding, too. Musa said he was not asking for special treatment. He said he just wanted space. He said he did not hate anyone. He was only trying to protect himself the only way he knew how. When he finished, he sat down slowly. No clapping, no shouting, just silence. Then something small happened that felt big. One of the men who used to insult Musa stood up. He said he did not know. He said he was sorry. His voice was low. Another woman spoke. She said the street was quick to judge. She said fear wears many clothes. I felt tears come to my eyes, not loud tears, quiet ones. I thought of how close my son came to carrying blame that did not belong to him. I thought of how many times we all touch people without thinking. That night the street changed a little, not fully, but enough to matter. People agreed to respect Musa's space. They agreed to warn visitors. They agreed to teach their children. As we packed the chairs and went back inside our houses, I watched Musa stand up and go back into his compound. His walk looked lighter, not free, but lighter. I held my son close that night and felt thankful that the street chose listening over shouting, thankful that pain was finally given a name before it destroyed another person.
Life did not turn perfect after that meeting, but it turned softer. That alone mattered. Days passed, then weeks. The street returned to its noise and small fights, but something had shifted underneath it all. People greeted Musa with nods and smiles. Hands stayed to themselves. New visitors were quietly told to respect his space. Children were warned gently, not with fear, but with sense. My son changed too. He became more careful around people. He started asking before touching. Sometimes I watched him play and felt a deep relief. That day could have marked him with shame or fear. Instead, it taught him care. Musa still wore his gloves. He still swept his compound every morning like clockwork. But now, sometimes he stayed outside longer. Sometimes he sat on a chair and watched the street. He even spoke to people. Short words, simple words, but real ones. One evening, rain started suddenly, the kind of rain that forces everyone to run. I was rushing to bring in clothes when I saw Musa standing by his gate staring at the sky. For a moment, I worried something was wrong, but then I saw his face, calm, just calm. Another time, my son fell while playing football and scraped his knee badly. He cried loud. Before I reached him, Musa stood up from where he was sitting. He did not touch my son, he only spoke. He told him to breathe slowly. He told him pain passes. His voice was steady. My son listened. The crying reduced. I thanked him from a distance. He nodded. That was enough. The man who once screamed became someone the street protected quietly, not with noise, with understanding. And I learned something important as a mother and as a woman living among people. I learned that silence does not always mean pride. I learned that fear does not always show its face clearly. I learned that wounds can live inside a person for years and still bleed when touched the wrong way. One afternoon, as I swept my own front, Musa stopped by his gate and spoke to me. He said, "Thank you." Just that. Thank you for speaking when others kept quiet. Thank you for seeing him as human before seeing him as strange. I did not know what to say. I only nodded, the way he always did. That night, I watched my son sleep and thought about the street, about how close we came to breaking a man who was already broken, about how easy it is to hurt people without knowing. The scream that once shook our street became a lesson instead of a scar. It taught us to slow down, to ask questions, to give space. Musa still does not like being touched. That has not changed. But now, when he walks down the street, he's not walking alone with his fear. He's walking among people who finally understand that not all pain asks to be seen, but all pain deserves respect.